GatoPerro back with another action figure review, today with the amazing Spider-Man comic book version from Medicom Mafex. I haven't taken a look at this guy yet. I feel like everyone else has on YouTube, but I figured I'll make my comeback on YouTube by looking at this guy because I just couldn't pass up the opportunity. Here we go with the packaging. I'm sure you guys have seen it many times if you looked at other people's reviews, so I'll go over it really quick. You can see the little McFarlane artwork on the top, a picture of the figure on the bottom. There's a nice little background of the city, but you can't really take it out. On the top we get multiple Spider-Man faces, more product shots on the side, and then we have more pictures that we were all salivating over online when it was announced. So let's go ahead and get this figure out of the packaging. And by taking him out of the packaging, I mean to just take this out and then slide him over here, because I did buy two of them because I'm an addict, really. But this guy, I gotta be honest, I was really looking forward to him, and I am, and I love it, but I haven't really taken him out of the package that much. I don't know what it is, but I always felt ever since I stopped reviewing figures that I haven't really been able to appreciate them as much, and unfortunately this guy has been in his box, which is weird, because I was really looking forward to him, and when I got him, it was just not underwhelming. It was awesome, but it just felt like, I don't know, like something was missing. And I think that what was missing was my opinion on it and my chance to look at it up close from my own perspective rather than looking at everybody else's stuff. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at him. And this guy is basically the saving grace for my wallet from having to purchase a McFarlane Spider-Man. In the recent months, I've become a real eBay addict, unfortunately, and I've gone ahead and purchased a whole bunch of action figures that I plan on reviewing on this channel. But this guy looks the part of a very 90s comic book Spider-Man. In fact, it looks a lot like the earlier Spider-Man Classics Toy Biz, the very first series Spider-Man. They both resemble the Mark Bagley artwork. But with this guy, being that it is from Medicom Mafex, you get a lot more stuff in the package that you wouldn't have from a Hasbro figure or any other. You get this added head, which is more the J. Scott Campbell head, which I'll pop on there in a little bit. And you get lots of accessories, which is basically the combination of all of Mafex's various Spider-Mans, all their ideas and articulation schemes put together into this one figure. And coincidentally, it is their 75th figure, so what better way to get it? I can't wait to see if number 100 will be a Medicom Black Suit Spider-Man, since we have yet to get one. So getting this guy off the stand and taking a look at him up close, he is beautiful and gorgeous, my gosh. I cannot tell you how much I was drooling over this figure when the proto shots came out. And the one thing about this guy that's really struck me is that he is basically a glorified Toy Biz figure, because the way he looks, the shading, the muscle shading, and the look of him just looks like a Toy Biz figure from like 2004 and 2005. And we're getting him as a import figure nowadays, an import figure that costs $100. In fact, if you try to get him right now, he's gonna run you up to about $125 to $150. So that's crazy to think about, that this guy would be that expensive, and yet he looks like something we would have gone for $10 about 15 years ago. So that is insane. But I guess if that's what it takes, because Hasbro doesn't have this kind of quality just yet. They really are getting up there, but it doesn't have this kind of paint detail. So this guy did change from the production shots to the actual figure. The blue is less metallic. It's a lot more of a darker blue with shading in it to highlight the muscles, which I do prefer a lot more. The metallic look, I don't know. I think in lighting would have looked a lot more harsh. I felt like this was a smarter way to go, but there was no warning as to like the color change. At least I don't think so, not that I remember. But overall, the execution of paint and the sculpted there and everything is wonderful. So now let's take a closer look at what this makes this guy worth your money. So the head sculpt, as I said, looks a lot like the Mark Bagley artwork. He's got these huge eyes, this pointy little nose that makes him look so friendly, yet surprised, and yet so classic looking. I love it. Now I do want to get into some flaws about the figure. Sometimes the webbing paint doesn't really carry on throughout the entire figure. I feel like they really missed out on the hands for the most part. I feel like you can see the sculpt lines, but they aren't as filled in with the web as they could be. And that's for all of them really. But I do appreciate that they got the pegs or the joints inside the elbows to match, and so that there's nothing popping out, so it all looks like a seamless transition in the costume. I think the back spider looks pretty awesome. Mine has a little bit of red bleeding, but that's because I'm a picky nerd. For some reason, they do have the Marvel logo on the back, which is kind of hard to see, but it's right there. You can kind of see a cut of the articulation in there, but nothing too bad. And then we get over here to the crotch piece, which some people for some reason had a problem with. Apparently, it's too big and it kind of looks like a diaper. And also the fact that the belt is kind of mimicked more so in the fact that the way that this underwear or crotch piece is built is kind of triangulates towards the center, which by itself creates the classic belt that he has. But I don't think it's that bad at all. In fact, it doesn't even bother me, or not even something I thought of until multiple people mentioned it. If anything, I know everyone else is going to have their Spider-Man in some kind of crouched position in which it's not really visible, and it still looks natural and it works. And if anything, I think whenever import companies give us crotch pieces that are too thin, I think that the joints kind of tend to hit each other, and you can't really get this kind of range if you want to move them like that. Then of course the legs I have no problem with at all. They continue the shading, his very defined ass cheeks, and then the shading on his boots and his feet look fine, no problem there. And they are kind of tiny, but to be fair, back in the 90s, no one could really draw feet correctly, like Rob Liefeld, even Mark Bagley. Like, these guys would have some really hulking bodies carrying like a freaking train or something, and then they would get to these thick thighs, and then down to the little skinny calves, and then their tiny feet. But to be honest, that's about it for the detail on the figure. I think his anatomy looks just fine. You can kind of see his side abs coming in through on the sides. I like that a lot. And overall, he's shaped and proportioned really well. His muscles are well defined. He's not overly buff, and he's not too slim. I don't own the original Toy Biz McFarlane Spider-Man, but I do own the Hasbro re-release. Alright, so here he is. As you can see, this guy was always mentioned to having the best Spider-Man proportions, but in reality, I think his legs are too thin. But something I'm noticing right now is that this Medicom Spider-Man doesn't have the same amount of like wrinkle detail as much as this guy does. Like Toy Biz always like doing these things where like you could clearly see like all the cross hatching, the fabric stretching, all the muscles coming through. And I did like what they did with the waist swivel, how it all dipped in together like that. It was pretty seamless. But again, I thought he was just too slim. And I think this guy, again, is like the right in between of his proportions, looking buff, yet like an acrobatic gymnast or like a parkour guy. Now we'll get into his accessories. And here we have the J. Scott Campbell head sculpt, or the more serious, angry looking eyes, which I do like. At first, I thought to myself, well, I'll never use this head. I prefer the big wide-eyed ones. But then in terms of like conveying a story, for example, in stop motion and Spider-Man's all serious during a fight and suddenly something big happens and his eye expression needs to change, you can definitely go from this to this to really like sell his emotions, and I like that a lot. And it consists basically the same, the pointy nose and the same head shape, so I really appreciate that. Only thing that changes is the eyes. And now we'll get into the Peter Parker head sculpt, which in my opinion is probably the best one that we've seen. It is hella handsome. In fact, I'll take it off for you and show you right now. I do have a hard time taking off the peg on the neck, so I'm just going to cut it here and cut to the head. And there we have Peter Parker. Such a handsome boy he is. Look at him. I think it looks great, especially from far away. I think if you get up close, it looks a little bit too pixelated. You can see a lot of like, I think it would be like 3D printing. And they definitely went with like the 90s bangs over his head. But I do like his haircut, his style. Definitely looks like how he should. Only problem is I think the portion of the costume that rides up on the neck is a little bit too bright compared to the darker shading of the torso or the chest section. And this head sculpt was a little bit hard to get off and put on. But I think that just might be the fact that this is my first time ever seeing it on the figure in person. But overall, I think it looks really good. It's not overly big or small, and it looks just fine. And when he's unmasked, you were also given this tiny mask to hold in his hands. And when I say tiny, I do mean ridiculously tiny. In fact, it is way smaller if you compare it to the regular head. The eye lenses are nowhere near as big, and it's just way too small. And it's not even the fact that it's not stretched over. It is just this is way too small, because Medicom has given us other masks before, but they're nowhere near as this small. They're more regular size. So I think this is a good accessory, but not to be held in his hand, more like a backdrop kind of thing. Now for the rest of his accessories, we do get what is basically the kit that we get for all of the Medicom Mafex figures. It comes with the magnetic feet, which premiered in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Deluxe set, which have become a standard now. They do stick on really well, and they will stay on the peg with no problems. He comes with fists, relaxed hands, the web holding hands, the web shooter hands, and the magnetic web crawling hands. So those are nice. And then these are the standard web lines that we would get with the other ones, the longer web line, and then the medium-sized web line. I really do wish that they would improve on those. I feel like, well, Mafex was the first company I know that premiered the choice of having the web line attached to his wrist via unpegging his hand and then adding it to the little loop. The only issue with that is that there's no really real way to like hold it, or for it to stay in place that well without holding it and then like praying that it just stays in the right spot. I think Mezco did a better job of providing that, because they have like they have a slit that goes inside the palm of the hand of the figure, and that's what holds the web line in place, and I think that works a lot better. So I hope that Mafex eventually comes out with that as well, because that is a really ingenious way of displaying the figure. So then on the left side we have our new accessories for this figure. Now true, this web line has been reused. This is originally what came with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. But the difference is that it has a little peg on the inside that, or actually a peg hole with this added piece that you could attach to the base like that. And I guess it's supposed to mimic like the web shooting out, and it's being held in place, but it's way too much. I don't know. It's too clunky. I don't really think I need the base to be holding this web to look good. I really do think it was fine on its own. Maybe they could have just added the loop at the end of the web to attach to his hand instead. But then we got this last one, which is this swinging web that has a little bit of a side that goes into one of the web swinging hands like so. The only problem is it doesn't hold it that well, and of course it's doing it right now on camera. But I don't know, I think this is too loose. I think we would have been better off with one of those Mezco webs. Again, I'm bringing up Mezco. But Mezco has these webs that are basically long twisty ties that do the job. They look accurate. And these guys really could have used some black shading in there, because Spider-Man's webs are white, but they do have like black to detail like all the indent and stuff of the web. But the overall shape and sculpting of them is pretty awesome. Now, for this Spider-Man's articulation, I feel like this is where Mafex really shines in having the figure look great aesthetically, but yet having him be able to do all those crazy Spider-Man poses that you want without it being all cut up at the joints. So his head is on a double ball peg, so we'll go up from the head itself and from the neck to go up that far and then that far down. He does have these armpit joints that kind of shift up and down, which I hope is natural and, you know, they won't snap one day. But they do have great armpit articulation. They let you bring the arm all the way forward and that far back. Yeah, about that far back. The arms do shoot straight out. He does have a bicep joint right here. Double jointed elbows. His hands do go in and out in whichever direction you have the ball peg facing. His ab crunch is able to go that far down. Not even that much, but mostly all the way back. You can kind of see a little bit of blue peeking in right there, but it's only if you really push the joint back. Most of his crunching, I feel, comes from his waist, and you can go all the way down like that. Added with the ab crunch, you can get him down into some really good crouching poses, and nothing really sticks out way too bad on the back. Now, for his legs, they are able to kick out that much, but if you had dropped down the joint, you can get his leg kicking about there. They do have the tendency of mostly going out to the side because this crotch joint isn't really soft. It's more of a harder plastic as opposed to previous Mafex figures. The thigh joint is mostly inside, the fact that this can swivel on the ball joint inside the leg itself. He does have double jointed knees. His ankles move down, they go up. He has an ankle swivel, and he does have toe articulation. And now we'll get into some quick size comparison with this Spider-Man, because over the past 2 years we've been bombarded with just amazing Spider-Man action figures. And I think the lineup of figures that you could get to be your official Spider-Man is just so wide. We have a lot of different choices, and so we'll get a quick look at some of them, starting with the Amazing Spider-Man 2 from the deluxe set. This one goes way back. This is about a 4-year-old figure. I think it still holds up, but you can see a lot of the improvements Mafex has made, especially in the joints and the quality, because this guy is nowhere near as loose, and they definitely learned a lesson about having much more joints that won't go limp on you, so that's good. And then here's one of the best Spider-Man figures of last year. It is the Medicom Spider-Man. Now their size and scale is a little bit bigger than this would be. I think they're more the true 6-inch scale. But this guy's awesome. He's obviously has a cloth. I didn't get a chance to review him. I might in the future. But here he is next compared to him, and they're a lot taller. Here he is next to a fellow Medicom Mafex member. It is Spider-Man from Spider-Man Homecoming. You can see the clear-cut difference between adult Spidey and teenage Spidey. And when this guy came out, I thought it was the best one they had ever made, because they had really got their shit together, and they fixed all the issues. They fixed all the loose joints. This guy has very stiff joints, and they stay in place for awesome poses. The paint scheme was perfect. It was dead on, and he looked just like he did in the film. And it was the best 6-inch Spider-Man we had based on that movie. But yet this guy served as a stepping stone for what would be from making this guy into this guy, because they experimented a lot more with the articulation, with the added butterfly joints that worked really well. So again, Mafex just keeps going up, and I can't wait to see what they come out next. Here he is next to a standard Marvel Legends Spider-Man. It is the Hasbro 2-pack Spider-Man from the Spider-Man and Mary Jane 2-pack. Here he is next to the quote-unquote McFarlane Spider-Man from Toy Biz. This is the Hasbro re-release, of course, with the darker colors. And I think this new Mafex Spider-Man has a lot better proportions, as I mentioned before. But to be honest with you, again, going back to the conversation of Toy Biz was very far ahead of its time with the articulation and what they were able to accomplish back then and everything. So in those respects, I do still really enjoy what Toy Biz did. In fact, I might even respect it so much, I went ahead and purchased a whole bunch of Toy Biz action figures that I'm going to review right here on this channel, so please stay tuned for that. And let's continue the size comparisons with the Toy Biz Venom from the Spider-Man Classic series. Oh man, I gotta pan the camera up. But yeah, he is super tall. We are due to get a Venom from the Mafex line pretty soon. And I'm hoping that he is huge. I'm hoping that he is bigger than what he looks in those promo pictures, because it looks a little bit too short and not as buff. But this guy still holds up. He is awesome. I did buy a second one of them, and just the articulation and the sculpt on him is tremendous. The only thing holding him back is this stupid button on the back, because of the gimmick that it's supposed to make his jaw move. But overall, this guy still holds up. He looks great with this Spider-Man because they're both from the 90s. And I can't wait for the new Mafex Venom. I hope it turns out great. I really don't want to be disappointed. So for my final thoughts, I think this guy is the great culmination of all of Mafex's Spider-Man ideas combined into one. And it seems like Spider-Man is the most successful character in their line, because I don't know if you guys have noticed, but it's literally a Spider-Man like every 10 figures, and they're all from the movie. It's like we don't get an Infinity War Captain America. I know we're getting an Iron Spider next month and all this kind of stuff. But I think they are the kings of Spider-Man figures. I think the articulation works great aesthetically, much more than the Yamaguchi figures, because I really don't like their design choices, and I think I really like how this guy just looks like a 90s figure popped out of the comic book page. Of course, I had to buy two of them because I knew I was going to be just in love with this figure, and because I'm an addict, like I said before. I think the only thing they did change from their previous Spider-Man figures is taking out the rubber crotch piece, which doesn't really allow for the leg to go up as high. But, I don't know, it doesn't really impede articulation, but it does make his legs go out more to the side more so. But in the long run, I think this Spider-Man is still awesome. Of course, being the Spider-Man fan that I am, this is going to be a 10 out of 10 for me. So, you know what? I got a good idea. I hope Mafex, they're not going to be listening, but in a perfect universe, I wish they would make another re-release of this guy. Same costume, same 90s look and everything, but they did what Toy Biz did, like literally years ago, and they would come out with a battle damaged edition, just like this figure right here, over here. So basically, it's the same mold, but the mask is all torn up, like his flesh is showing through. But I would like them to go crazy, just add blood, add all kinds of different stuff to it, just make it look crazy battle damaged. That would be amazing. So, of course, this guy's a 10 out of 10. I highly recommend you get him if you can. I did Moment in Time. He is very expensive on eBay and stuff like that. He's close to 150 bucks, which is why I snagged two of them as soon as I could. So, yeah, good luck getting them. he is definitely worth the money. I really wish import companies wouldn't have gone up in price so much, because we're paying $100 for this, and it didn't seem that long ago Toby's figures came out and they were like $10 to $15. But if that's what it takes to get this awesome Spider-Man, so be it. I guess I'll just, have to keep working hard, earn more money, get more figures. That's the name of the game. GatoPerro out. Please stay tuned for more reviews.